China's evolving threats to the Philippines have become more aggressive and multifaceted in recent years. As Manila has taken a firm stance against Beijing's expansionist policies. Instead of backing down, China is intensifying its gray zone tactics. From using the combined forces of their Coast Guard and maritime militia vessels. Now, Beijing is using its naval military might, sending highly capable warships and fighter jets to intimidate Philippine Coast Guard and fisherfolks within the Philippines' exclusive economic zone. This remains the primary and most visible current threat to Manila from Beijing's aggression in the contested waters in the West Philippine Sea. With these, how the Philippines and its ally, the United States, react. Will the Philippines now sending its warships instead of its Coast Guard vessel in patrolling its sovereign waters in the West Philippine Sea to counter Chinese destroyer? Looking at the Philippine Navy's inventory of naval assets, Manila have warships, particularly their 3 guided missiles frigates, the BRP Miguel Malvar, BRP Jose Rizal and BRP Antonio Luna. These were the only naval assets of the Philippine Navy capable of countering the PLA Navy, the Guilin-class Type 052D guided missile destroyer frequently sent to intimidate the Philippine Coast Guard vessels. The BRP Miguel Malvar is the biggest and the most modern naval assets of the Philippine Navy. It is the first of the Philippine Navy's guided missile frigates that is equipped with complete anti-ship, anti-submarine, and anti-aircraft capabilities. The Miguel Malvar class frigates offer enhanced capabilities over the Jose Rizal class frigates. At 118.4 meters long and 14.9 meters wide, they cruise at 15 knots and a maximum speed of 25 knots with a range of 4,500 nautical miles. While its armament, consisting of an OTO Melara 76mm main gun, 2 C-triple tube 324mm torpedo launching systems, a GOKDENIZ close-in weapon system, 8 SSM 700KC Star anti-ship missiles, and 16 vertically launched Mica surface-to-air missiles, is limited compared to larger navies of China. Still, it is a major leap for the Philippine Navy's offshore combat force. Aside from the Philippines' naval assets, the United States Navy were supplementing Manila's defense posture in the West Philippine Sea, sending several of their modern warships. Just 2 days after a collision between 2 Chinese vessels while pursuing a Philippine Coast Guard ship, the United States deployed 2 warships surrounding the Scarborough Shoal in the West Philippine Sea. The Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer USS Higgins, DDG-76, and the Independence-class USS Cincinnati, LCS-20, conducted freedom of navigation and overflight patrols around the shoal. The U.S. 7th Fleet is also conducting several patrols, sending their aircraft carriers and strike groups in the West Philippine Sea as part of its area of operation. At present, it is the largest of the forward-deployed U.S. fleets, with 50 to 70 ships, 150 aircraft, and 27,000 sailors and Marines. Its principal responsibilities are to provide joint command in natural disaster or military operations and operational command of all U.S. naval forces in the region. The Philippines is the oldest treaty ally of the U.S. in Asia. Washington has repeatedly warned that it's obligated to defend the Philippines if Filipino forces come under an armed attack, including in the South China Sea. Clashes at Scarborough and other South China Sea flashpoints have raised questions over whether a miscalculation could trigger Manila's mutual defense treaty with Washington and potentially a conflict between the 2 superpowers. Despite heightened tensions, the Philippines ruled out sending Navy warships to Scarborough Shoal to prevent further escalation. The Philippine Navy did not deploy warships to Scarborough Shoal after the recent Chinese vessel collision. Instead, the Philippines maintained a single Coast Guard vessel, the BRP Teresa Magbanua, to avoid escalating tensions and to pursue a civilian-led approach to the South China Sea flashpoint. In the aftermath of the August 11th incident, where a Chinese Coast Guard ship collided with a Chinese PLA Navy warship. While chasing a Philippine vessel, the Philippines reported an increase in Chinese maritime militia and Coast Guard presence around the shoal. Manila insists on using its measured, civilian-led approach to counter China's assertive tactics, which includes publicizing its encounters with Chinese vessels. The Philippines has adopted a strategy of assertive transparency, often videoing and publishing its encounters with Chinese vessels to gain international support. This strategy has helped the Philippines gain international support for its stance on freedom of navigation and international law in the South China Sea. China Coast Guard ship that was damaged in a collision with a Chinese Navy destroyer earlier this month has been seen undergoing repairs at a military base, according to satellite photos. American space technology company Maxar said the pictures showed the same Chinese vessel, identified by the hull number 3104, that had sustained severe damage to its bow on August 11th during a pursuit of a Philippine patrol boat in contested waters in the South China Sea. Maxar's images confirmed for the first time that the Chinese ship had made it back to port since the collision near Scarborough Shoal, a Beijing-controlled reef within the Philippines' exclusive fishing waters. The Maxar imagery, first reported by Reuters, showed China Coast Guard 3104 beside a dry dock at the Yulin Naval Base in Sanya, the capital of China's southernmost province of Hainan. Another new photograph, captured and shared by Maxar, showed the stricken vessel inside the dry dock for the first time. In the incident earlier this month, the 3104 slammed into the Chinese guided missile destroyer Guilin while both ships were pursuing a smaller Philippine Coast Guard boat delivering supplies to fishermen around Scarborough Shoal. The smaller craft outmaneuvered the two larger ships, causing the 1,500-ton China Coast Guard vessel, a converted Chinese Navy corvette, to slam into the side of the 7,500-ton warship. The forecastle of the Chinese Coast Guard vessel was severely damaged, and subsequent search and rescue operations pointed to the possibility that some crew members had been thrown overboard by the impact. Observers have voiced concerns that Chinese forces could escalate tensions by taking more aggressive action to save face, putting it on a possible collision course with the United States over its decades-old mutual defense treaty with the Philippines. 1 week after the destructive collision, Chinese maritime forces, including Coast Guard and maritime militia vessels, conducted drills and increased their presence around 2nd Thomas Shoal, where the Philippine Navy maintains an outpost on the grounded warship BRP Sierra Madre. The aggressive maneuvers, including water cannon drills and the deployment of armed boats, have intensified tensions in the region. The drills were conducted at 2nd Thomas Shoal, known in the Philippines as Ayungin Shoal, in the disputed Spratly Islands. An Armed Forces of the Philippines (AFP) Maritime Domain Awareness Patrol observed 11 China Coast Guard watercraft forces exercising at 2nd Thomas Shoal with several armed fast boats and rigid-hulled inflatable boats. Compared to previous instances of China Coast Guard small boats, the Philippine military noted that these vessels have been upgraded with mounted weapons. A video released by Manila shows a Chinese small boat equipped with a heavy machine gun and crewed by personnel wearing camouflaged fatigues, approaching the Philippine patrol. Alongside the small boats, the Philippine military spotted Chinese military aircraft, including an unmanned aerial vehicle and Navy helicopter, and 9 maritime militia vessels at the shoal during the China Coast Guard exercise. 5 Chinese cutters were also observed practicing the employment of water cannons. The actions are consistent with China's gray zone tactics, designed to intimidate and harass, without initiating a full-scale military conflict. The deployment of armed rigid-hull inflatable boats, supported by PLA rotary wing and unmanned aircraft, suggests that Beijing is seeking to deter Manila from further attempts to enter the area and increase general awareness and coordination between its forces, following the collision. The biggest question that remains is whether the behavior of PRC forces in future direct encounters with Philippine vessels will escalate, which Beijing has threatened to do. In response, the Armed Forces of the Philippines, AFP, deployed troops and boats from the BRP Sierra Madre to prevent Chinese vessels from getting too close. Philippine Defense Secretary Gilberto Teodoro condemned the activity, and the Philippine Navy warned that any attempt to board or tow away the BRP Sierra Madre would be a red line, potentially triggering its mutual defense treaty with the United States. The BRP Sierra Madre, a World War II-era landing ship, was deliberately run aground by the Philippines in 1999 to serve as a permanent outpost at the Shoal, which lies within Manila's exclusive economic zone. A handful of Philippine Marines has since been stationed aboard the rusting vessel. Beijing has repeatedly demanded its removal, asserting sovereignty over the reef. Manila, however, maintains that the grounding was a lawful assertion of its maritime rights, strengthened by a 2016 United Nations-backed arbitral ruling that voided China's sweeping 9-line claim.